from India were being monitored and that most of them have already been tested for the virus.
We are left with only about 59 who went into mandatory quarantine in various facilities. This have done the 11th day, and indeed, yes, testing was done on most of them. We also had those that arrived from China and London, and when each hits their 10th day of quarantine, we are in contact with the Nairobi Metropolitan Service, who are coordinating the testing for all those in quarantine. And we can confirm that even those who went on self-quarantine, yesterday were assembled at Gara Health Center, less for about 14 who are not reached, and they were all tested yesterday.
Out of 1,108 samples tested over the last 24 hours, 22 positive cases were recorded, with one more person succumbing to the virus in Mathare. Nairobi has 10 cases, Mombasa 9, while Kwale, Nakuru and Taita Taveta recorded 1 case each. The ministry says that with the deployment of the mobile laboratory at the Namanga border, congestion will be eased, with the result turnaround time set to reduce significantly. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
And from our KBC Channel 1 Facebook page, Ledama Mepetu from Kilgoris Town, watching Channel 1 Weekend. Josh Jones tuned in from Mumias. Joshua Onsonko from Isoge, Nyamira County, I'm watching live. And then Mutio Kisilo kutoka Bombolulu, Mombasa, tuned in. Charles Masharia, you also watching. Tell us where you're watching us from, and all your burning questions on the response of COVID-19, situation of COVID-19 in the country. Keep them coming at Purity_Museo and at KBC Channel 1 News. Will be answering them in a short moment. The government spokesperson with Kano Sarah Soguna is in our studios this night. Rising tensions characterized the situation in Kenya's border with Uganda for the better part of Sunday, as locals decried heavy presence of long-haul trucks. Hundreds of border operators in the border town of Malaba staged protests to demonstrate overcrowding of trucks lining up for clearance. Prior to the protest by the locals, long-distance drivers had paralyzed transport as they protested what they termed as mistreatment by Uganda authorities. Beatrice Getonyenge-Tich reports.
Business came to a standstill at Malaba border after border riders protested the presence of truck drivers who have been at the border point for days. The riders argue that the presence of the truckers at the border point exposes the residents to coronavirus. Area OCPD Wilson Moraya said the government is currently addressing the concerns raised by the affected truckers, who, despite complaints from the locals, are also alleging mistreatment by the Ugandan authorities.
Tusigonganishe vishwa, hao wageni wakiondoka tubaki tukijiuliza tutajenga namna gani. Tujue hii maraba ni yetu, tujue tunahitaji hii nduka, tujue tunahitaji hii barabara, tunahitaji ile bodaboda, tunahitaji mambo ambayo iko na sisi maraba, na ikiwezekana iimarishwe.
In the meantime, a group known as Baringo County Mentors have launched a program that seeks to cushion hundreds of households in Eldama Ravine and Mogotio sub-counties from the effects of COVID-19 by distributing to them food and non-food items. The program specifically targets families that have lost their source of livelihood due to coronavirus.
Na wakati huu ambapo tumegumbikwa na hili janga la coronavirus, tukaona ni vyema sisi kama vijana, na ambavyo tulihamasishwa na CS wetu CS Kagwe, kuwa vijana, you need to take part in the community. And this is the part that we took in the community to ensure that the less fortunate and the vulnerable families wamepata kitu.
In Nakuru, the county administration is expressing concern over rising cases of job losses in flower farms based in Naivasha. This is after it emerged that over 10,000 flower farm workers have either been sacked or sent on unpaid leave. According to the county, this was a major blow to the economy, as the sector was among the leading revenue contributor.
Tumeona watu walioathirika sana, watu walemavu, tumewapea chakula. Pia tumepatia wazee, na pia wamechanganyikana na wale watu walifutwa katika flower farms karibu na Naivasha. Na tunapatia watu wale wameathirika na maji mingi kwa sababu ya mvua, na pia wale wameathirika na COVID-19.
The Chamber of Commerce and Industry President Richard Ngatia has assured manufacturing industries and small medium enterprises that have closed down fully or partially that his organization was working on an economic revival plan to help them get back on the road. He gave the undertaking even as Thika Cloth Mills gave a cash donation of 1 million shillings to Kiambu COVID-19 emergency team to enable the committee reach many Kenyans who have been negatively impacted economically by the pandemic to have a decent living.
The Chamber is taking immediate, significant and decisive action to support Kenyans and businesses facing hardships. Businesses to build productive capabilities and agricultural value chains, capacities to produce goods and services in the export sector to improve the enhanced trade and investment.
So we are doing whatever we can, and we want to ease the pain for those people who are going through a lot of pain right now.
Elsewhere, a personal initiative that seeks to enlighten locals on the dangers of COVID-19 is already in practice in Lari, Kiambu County, amid calls for support to vulnerable populations. The unique gesture by Mata Hospital Chief Executive Officer Professor Dominic Mwenja targets underprivileged groups from his village who will benefit from donations of masks and food items amid.
We have donated 250 food for 250 families today. And that's enough food for them to at least to eat for about a week. We have also distributed today 8,000 masks to our people here in Lari. And if really we are going to beat this COVID, we have to get our people to put on the masks.
Beatrice Getonyeng-Etich, Channel 1 News.
Thank you, Beatrice. To Eid celebrations, it was a new normal for Muslim faithful across the country, with existing guidelines on the containment of the COVID-19 pandemic, forcing them to celebrate Eid al-Fitr in the confines of their homes. Mosques and grounds where the faithful often gather for morning Eid prayers remained deserted on Sunday.
The holy month of Ramadan came to a close on Saturday with the sighting of the moon, meaning Sunday was the first day of Shawwal when Muslims celebrate Eid al-Fitr. On a normal Eid day,
Allahu Akbar.
Islamic prayer grounds are always full with hundreds of Muslim faithful praying together before proceeding to visit their families and enjoy the day. This year, however, has a new normal. The grounds remain deserted, mosques are closed, and every family has had to celebrate from the confines of their homes.
Ugonjwa huu ni hatari. Kwa kuwa ni hatari, hii Eid kidogo imekuwa watu waiswali majumbani. Pamoja waiswali majumbani, imeleta pia msisimko fulani. Kwa sababu watu wengi wamezoea kumfuata imamu. Wao wako nyuma, lakini kwa sababu ya hili janga la ugonjwa, ikawa watu wajifunze wakiwa peke yao wanaweza kuswali vipi.
The obtaining situation typified by Musa and his family who live in the city's Isli Biafra estate. Musa says that due to the current guidelines, he has had to make the best of this day from his house with his wife and children.
Kwa hii Eid imekuwa tofauti na Eid zingine zote. Kama mwaka jana tulikuwa watu wengi, familia, wandugu, tulikuwa tumetangamana sote. Hata tukaweza kutembelea mandugu zetu wengine kwa South B.
In normal circumstances, Musa says he would be taking his children to visit their grandfather, but the new normal has altered life.
Mara nyingi kama saizi hivi watoto wanataka kucheza, wanataka kusherehekea ile Eid. Na familia hatukuweza kutangamana nao kwa saizi kwa sababu hizi vile mipaka imefungwa na kuzuiwa kwa cessation of movement katika hizi area, inakuwa ni vigumu mtu kuingia. Sasa imebidi tusherekee tu kama familia tu vile tuko.
His wife has however chosen to see the positive, saying that praying and fasting together at home has firmed up the family bond.
Subra ni kitu kizuri. Ukachukulia kila kitu alhamdulillah. Mwenyezi Mungu anaweza kuwa anataka mimi niwe karibu na yeye, anataka nikubali hali ambayo ameileta. Are we embracing it ama we want to run away from it, we want to die from stress? Alhamdulillah, tumechukulia vizuri na tumeona raha. Hata Eid tumefurahi, tuko pamoja kama family, tuko pamoja, tumeenjoy kwa pamoja, tumetengeza kila mahali ili watoto wasihisi lazima watoke nje, tukae nyumbani, tuobserve kila kitu na tuenjoy tukiwa kwetu. Alhamdulillah.
In Mombasa's Old Town, the cessation of movement directive by the government in a bid to curb the spread of coronavirus had left the faithful with limited options on what to purchase for the celebrations.
Tunajaribu kuja kuangalia vitu vya sikukuu, lakini tumepata shida kidogo. Japo viko kitabutabu, si kama mwaka uliopita.
With the Eid festivities this year being totally different than the ones that have passed before, the Muslim faithful across the country have been asked to pray for the nation as it gears up in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Yusuf Farah, Channel 1 News, Nairobi.
Thank you so much, Yusuf Farah, for that report. Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim brothers and sisters. May God answer all your prayers. The coronavirus pandemic has disrupted life as we know it, with thousands of Kenyans no longer able to provide for their families, leaving vulnerable populations dangerously exposed. With the hotel industry among sectors worst affected by the pandemic, street families who are largely dependent on leftovers from hotels have faced the brunt. Channel 1's Caroline Kamau spent a day with John Mwangi and highlights the plight of those living on the streets in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic.
Every morning, John Mwangi, like millions of other Kenyans, rises to find a way to feed for his family. John is the father of a 2.5-year-old boy and a husband. This is Koja Roundabout in Nairobi, the base from where he operates from. He performs odd jobs in the streets like ferrying luggage, commonly referred to as beba beba. His meager returns would previously provide resources to feed his family, but times have changed with the coronavirus pandemic.
Anafanya kazi town, kazi ya troli. Sasa hata kazi hiyo troli haina faida kwa sasa juu magazi simamishako za kutoka mashambani kuja Nairobi. Sasa ndio zilipatia usaidizi. Sasa hivi makazi zote zimesimama. Hata hizo makazi zingine zilikuwa litengiwa kwa maduka zipatikani, juu hata maduka mengi zimefungwa.
At his place of work, he will sit and wait, hoping to get a client who wants his luggage carried.
Before COVID, nilikuwa pata hata mbili nilikuwa pata. Hata mbili. Na sasa kulingana bado sikuwa troli na kulipa. Sasa kutoka jioni ile troli inahitaji 100. Bado iko ile harakati. Kwa ile harakati bado tu kwa ile elfu nimepata 1,200. Pale ndio ranch na Nairobi hoja bado iko juu. Bado hoja mahitaji bado hata mimi mwanaume kitu kaka sigara ama kanywaji hiyo ni kawaida. Sasa ukipiga hesabu na itafika kwa bibi angekosa kwa siku yake angekosa 500 yangu yenye kwa mfikishia.
After hours of waiting, he returns home to his family.
Hata asubuhi nimeamka nikaenda town. Sasa kwa town nimeshinda hapo nikaona sasa atakula kitu nafanya nikaona tu hata nirudi nikanisha tu na familia yangu. Kidogo kama tupata hiyo usaidizi tutapata. Sasa huko town hakuna usaidizi yoyote napata.
This alley in Gara is where some of the street families have put up. This is what they call home. We meet John's wife, Hawa Nyambura, and son. Life in the streets is not easy, but this is what he has known since the death of his mother. Feeding his family, he says, has become extremely difficult.
Hii corona ilikuja, sambo ilisimama tu mara moja. Makazi ikasimama. Transport ikakuwa ni ngumu hata hiyo ya watu kuja mpaka kufungwa. Sasa tukahangaje. Sasa hata yeye ndio ananiokolea kidogo venye sasa wanaenda town kuomba hivyo kwa duka, akipata kwa usaidizi anakuja tunashare. Na mimi nikienda nikipata 100 ama 150 naongeza kaunga.
The wife can no longer venture into the city streets to beg for money. For the 29-year-old man, it is the uncertainty of his young son's life that bothers him the most.
Matumaini yangu ni naomba tu wanaweza saidika kimasomo, na wakitoka shule wanakuja wanapata pale pazuri wanaweza pumzika. Watu shule zimefungwa, na after hapo hata venye unaweza onesha hata mwanzo wako pale mlitoka ushagu. Sasa hata ushagu ajui, sasa hata fare ipatikanagi. Sasa tumezwa tu katu hivyo ki state family.
As we continue with our conversation, this woman also from the streets approaches us. John's wife, however, is not amused, and a scuffle soon ensues. Diplomacy does not work here, and Hawa has to mark her territory as she deals with her perceived enemy in the only language those in the streets can understand. Their obvious challenges have, however, seen the Sarakasi Dome crime see poor, and Kenya police come together to ensure these families have one hot meal a day.
We don't want anybody in the streets to sleep hungry. So even though they're in the streets, we believe they also deserve a meal, at least a hot meal per day. So we'll be making them one hot meal per day. It's a soup kitchen that we are starting.
The project will run for 45 days, with plans to upscale it to incorporate more vulnerable populations. Community Policing Deputy Director Fidelia Kisinyo says the involvement in the program was important to keep the streets secure.
Msemo wetu wa polisi unasema utumishi kwa wote. So tunatumikia kila mmoja ambaye ni mwananchi wa Kenya, mwenye anaishi ndani ya Kenya yetu. Sisi ndio watu ambao tunawalinda kwa kulinda usalama, na tukajua wakati tumbo iko tupu haina chakula, lazima mtu atafikiria mambo mengine ya kwenda labda afanye wizi, aibie mtu ndiye akule. Lakini wakati tumbo iko na kitu iko ndani, angalau amepata chakula, ameshiba, hatakuwa na mawazo kama hayo.
The efforts highly appreciated by John, his family, and many other street families who are beneficiaries of the program. Though their challenges are far from over, John says he takes it a day at a time and trusts that one day his tide will turn and he will be able to offer his young family a more decent life. Caroline Kamal reporting for Channel 1 News.
Thank you so much, Caroline Kamau. Life on the streets never been easy, but now unbearable with this COVID-19 that has impacted negatively on the economy of this nation. Calls for political sobriety reverberated Sunday, with religious leaders challenging the political class to desist from divisive politics and dedicate their energies towards dealing with the challenges posed by the coronavirus pandemic. Speaking at the Holy Family Minor Basilica during a live Sunday service, Bishop Dominic Kimengich urged Kenyans to remain united and support one another during these trying times.
On Sunday, the 24th of May, Kenyans would once again follow the Sunday service through live broadcast or online, with the ban on congregating at places of worship still in force. At the Holy Family Minor Basilica, messages of hope and encouragement will take precedence, with a focus on the current COVID-19 pandemic, locust invasion, and the flood's menace.
The word of God in Isaiah 41:10 encourages us, saying, "Do not be afraid, for I am with you, and I am your God. Let nothing terrify you. I will make you strong and help. I'll protect you and save you."
And with the country having witnessed heightened political activities in recent days, the clergy will call on the political class to desist from divisive campaigns and focus on addressing the problems that continue to bedevil the nation.
The time that all our leaders should unite to fight the common enemy, that is coronavirus. I come from North Rift, and our people are confused and unable to understand what is really happening to our politicians and the promises they had made. People are still hurt.
Bishop Dominic Kimengich questioning the abandoned promises made by the leaders.
Please see the good of this country and put aside the political games and the jostling for political positioning regarding 2022 elections. We have a big problem in front of us, and if we don't put all our energies in eradicating COVID-19, there might be no people to rule in the year 2022.
Tunambariki Mungu Baba, anaweza.
It was with the same script, different cast at All Saints Cathedral, where Kenyans were all challenged to remain united in the face of the prevailing challenges.
That as Christians, we can be confident that God has won the final victory. Because at the cross, death was defeated, the sting of sin was defeated, devil and his schemes were defeated.
The calls coming even as they urged Kenyans to observe guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health meant to contain the spread of the deadly coronavirus disease. For Channel 1 News, I'm Sarafina Roby.
And the social disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has been inconceivable not only to Kenyans but to the rest of the people around the world. The society at the moment is a complete opposite to what it was before the pandemic was first reported. The virus has literally exposed the precarious nature of the many things taken for granted by humanity. These things allow life to function without much difficulty, yet they appear gone with COVID-19, at least for now. Safin Acheng Oma looks at how life has changed for some Kenyans with the emergence of the contagion. Take a look.
The orderly daily flow of business in markets, schools, shops, cafes and restaurants. Talk of small gatherings of friends, travels here and there, yet suddenly they all seem built on quicksand. The coronavirus pandemic has brought the world almost on its knees. Restrictions imposed to curb its spread has considerably changed the way of life. Ordinarily, on a day like this, places of worship would be filled to capacity. Men would probably be catching up with the weekend sporting action, as women put their thoughts together in one chama meeting or the other, just doing all they can to spend this weekend in the best way possible. We are at Uhuru Park, one of the busiest parks in Kenya's capital, Nairobi. On a typical Sunday, this place would be a beehive of activities. This recreational ground will be filled to capacity as people find themselves spaces just to lay here and have a good time. Glowing faces of children visiting the park for face painting and boat rides is always a spectacle to behold. Yet today, these things, almost taken for granted many a times, are gone. The silence that hit us is deafening. One can easily catch the sound of trees as they are blown by wind, and birds chirp with little difficulty, perhaps enjoying the break from the usual human traffic. Only a few people can be spotted walking around, and some lying on the almost empty ground, perhaps admiring Nairobi or maybe in deep thought. Thoughts that perhaps have been ignited by the adverse effects of COVID-19. A few of them share with nostalgia how a typical Sunday would be like for them.
Nilikuwa nimemweka pale, ningekuwa nimepanga toys zangu zinaendelea kuuzwa, quad bikes ningekuwa nimeshaosha, nimeweka mafuta tayari, nisingekuwa nimekosa hata 200 300 sasa ningekuwa nimeshika niko nayo kwa mfuko nikitegemea venye siku itaenda.
Kama saa hii Sunday inafaa ni kuwa busy kwa kuchora, lakini saa hii unaona saa hii tumesimama tu, hakuna chenye tunafanya, tuko tu hivi.
Kama leo Sunday saa hizi ningekuwa kanisani, lakini kwa saa hizi unaona sijaenda kanisa juu kanisa bado zijafunguliwa.
Traders who enjoyed booming business, especially on weekends and holidays, are bearing the brunt of the economic paralysis.
Mimi hapa nafanya kazi ya face painting ama kazi ya watoto, na tangu corona ingie kazi yangu iliisha na ikaisha kabisa.
Tunaumia kwa sababu sisi hapa Uhuru Park, kama jana ilikuwa siku ya Eid, singekosa 5,000, singekosa 5,000. Hata kama ni rent naishi kwa nyumba ya 4,500, ningekuwa nimelipa hiyo jana.
And as the World Health Organization projects the contagion may not be gone anytime soon, the question is, how long can Kenyans withstand this new normal?
Wacha shughuli zirudi kawaida, sisi wenyewe tujichunge, kwa sababu mimi nikiendelea hivi sasa miezi 3 inakuja ama mwezi mwingine mmoja zaidi ndafanya nini?
Tukiendelea venye iko, yenyewe watu wengi tutaumia juu hata wengi saa hii hata wanauliza tu tufunguliwe tu turudi maushago.
In this state of quietness during this time, the thoughts about how to survive these harsh economic times has been louder in the minds of Kenyans. And as they're calling for the government to ensure that we return to normalcy quicker, the question is, are we ready to take the risk of increased cases of COVID-19 or, in a worst-case scenario, casualties? And if we choose to go that direction, how then do we trade on this rocky bridge without falling off? For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Acheng Oma.
Safin tried to remind us the things we used to enjoy but took for granted. With medical researchers yet to find definitive treatment for COVID-19, individuals' immune system remains a critical factor in the recovery of those infected. For those with pre-existing conditions, including HIV, they remain at a risk as the immunity is already compromised. We look at why those living with HIV should faithfully stick to their HIV regimens.
Because people living with HIV already have their immunity compromised, they should, one, take extra care. And you've seen the committee that is responsible for people living with HIV reach out to special appeal for masks and sanitizers for this population so they can exercise extra care not to contract COVID. Because if they do, then with their pre-existing condition, then their case will be worse.
Time for us now to take our first commercial break. Thank you so much for staying with Channel 1 Weekend. I'm seeing your questions coming in. Of course, I'll be directing them to the government spokesperson tonight. But for those who don't have questions but are following, Ali Mansour, that's still on our Facebook page, KBC Channel 1 News. You're watching as usual from Hola, Tana River County. Benjamin Titus watching live from Kakamega County. We are ready for what you've prepared for us, Channel 1 News. Thank you. MCM Tarajiwa watching from Chumbi, Machakos Junction. And Paul Waithaka, you're watching the show from Nyeri County. Thank you so much. Rashid Kipchumba watching from Kapsabet, Nandi County. And also Ledama Mepetu, you're watching from Kilgoris. Thank you so much. We're taking our first commercial break. When we come back, of course, we'll be having our interview. We'll first have our sports news and then our conversation on the status of COVID-19 in the country. Keep your questions coming. I'll try and sample all of them and have them answered. Let's now take that break. Stay with us.
Top on Channel 1. Yeyote aliye na kinga hafifu mwilini yuko katika hatari ya kuambukizwa COVID-19.
Get out of my house. You two don't know me and you don't know what I'm capable of. Get out of here.
I'm going to get a restraining order against you.
Do it. And I swear your girlfriend will know the whole truth.
Let's put an end to the stupid little game that you have going on. You've got a very long way to go to catch up to me.
Pata habari kuhusu COVID-19 kupitia vyanzo vinavyoaminika. Piga 719 au bonyeza *719#. COVID-19 inazuilika. Jilinde, linda familia na jamii.
Je, ungependa kujua jinsi ninavyojizuia kuambukizwa au kuambukizana virusi vya korona? Ni rahisi. Mwanzo, ninaziendesha shughuli zangu zote za kikazi na hata za kibiashara kutoka papa hapa nyumbani kwangu. Baadaye, ninaitunza mwili wangu vyema kwa kuiweka katika hali iliyo sawa kupitia mazoezi ya mara kwa mara na pia lishe bora. Mwishowe, ninaungana na jamii yangu pamoja na marafiki zangu kupitia njia ya simu au mtandao ili kuzuia dhiki na upweke wakati huu mgumu. Kumbuka, haijalishi kama uko na virusi vya korona au la, Salia nyumbani. Uokoe maisha.
This message has been brought to you by the Government of Kenya and its partners. On the next episode of Corner.
Me, the harder I try, the more guarded he gets.
Well, that's just because you're the only one who can get to him.
Not true.
It is true.
A manager will not show up at my house in the morning to discuss our personal relationship.
Why are you being so mean?
I trust you understand that it must not look like sabotage.
Of course, but I need an assurance from you. What happens after I do this for you?
Do I have to repeat the same thing over and over again? And you're not children!
This is Channel 1 Weekend. Thank you for staying with us. I'm Purity Musenlensa Odingo is our sign language interpreter. Let's continue with the broadcast. The lives of people residing in informal settlements appear to be bearing the greatest brunt of coronavirus pandemic. The catastrophe has confronted the urban poor in a way never witnessed before, as dozens of families are being pushed to the periphery. And Buru highlights the struggles of a local gospel artist who literally lives from hand to mouth as she finds old jobs to sustain her family. These menial tasks, however, are proving hard to come by the moment. This is the story of a musician's dream blighted by the deadly COVID-19 outbreak.
In our journey deep inside the heart of Kisauni constituency, we land in Vikwatani, Chororoni village, where we discover informal settlements. We would find our way through the shanties to locate Mary Chari's house. She warmly welcomes us into this tiny room she calls her home. Chari has been a single parent after her husband abandoned them many years ago. She tells us she previously owned a small business of cooking for masons at construction sites in the constituency just to sustain her family of two. She would then take us on her journey as a musician. Clearly, this venture is yet to take off despite many years of struggle.
Mimi ni mwimbaji, nimetoa CD. Sasa nilikuwa nikatembea kwenye makanisa, naenda na performu, nauza CD 2-3, hasinunuli nyingi hivyo, lakini nikija pia napata chakula. Lakini saa hii huko makanisani hatuendi kwenda kuimba, hata CD hujui utauzia nani. Unajai kwako ila kupitia wewe.
Luckily, her 17-year-old daughter has chosen to follow in her footsteps.
Mama ametoa album, mimi ndio nimetoa hiyo ambayo iko kwa YouTube ni ya kwanza, na I thank God nimetoa pia ya pili, na pia naomba Mungu aniwezeshe pia niendelee kutoa video yake.
This has been a journey of resilience for both of them. Yet, the coronavirus pandemic appears to have hurt them the most. Chari's business closed down and is now forced to go to people's homes to do house chores just to earn a living.
Vile unavyoniona hata sijasoma, siwezi kuajiri wa kazi za serikali. Ni kazi ya nyumbani tu sana ndo nimetegemea. Nikifutwa kazi ya nyumbani, naja nachukua gunia na ukota scrap, hata hizi hapa zingine. Wewe nikiona msumari huko na ukota, naja na bwaga hapa. Wakati mwingine nimekosa kabisa, naenda na sukuma napata 50, tuje tupata mboga. Maana sina mume, ni mimi tu na Yesu na huyo mtoto.
And since there is no school, her daughter Joyce helps by also finding house jobs to supplement her mother's earnings.
Mara nyingi kufanya tu kazi za nyumba, niende kwa mtu nikamsaidie kufuta nyumba yake, kumpikia, ndio pia mimi pia nipate chakula hapo juu. The moment ninapika, ninakula, ananilipa hata kama ni 150, natoka.
Clearly, the going is tough for the young one, but she is optimistic that she will be able to save her mother from the chains of poverty.
Juu sikuwa nimependa hii maisha kabisa, ndio kana naambia Mungu anisaidie, anishike mkono niweze kumsaidia mama katika maisha yake na kuyaboresha.
Their lives of music careers now appear hinged on how quickly the contagion will disappear from the face of the earth. For now, they can only hope that Lady Luck will smile on them soon.
Nimemuomba huyo Mungu tu anisaidie. Sijataka msaada wa mwanamume, sijataka msaada wa bwana wa mtu. Manake kama nuko kwa magavana nimeenda, kwa wabunge nimeenda, mama mtaa nimeenda, na sijapata msaada. Sasa nimemtegemea tu Mungu na kumwambia mwanangu tusichoke kuomba, na kijana sikudanganya huko. Ndio maana dadangu namuona mtoto huyu yuko form 4 sasa.
For Channel 1 News Our Weekend from Mombasa County, I am Anboro.
Let's now quickly have a look at some sports. Later on our interview, world marathon record holder Eliud Kipchoge joined LEWA Wildlife Conservancy Rangers on a practice run for the virtual LEWA Marathon Challenge, a global run in support of conservation and rangers that is set to be held on the 27th of June.
With just over a month to go to the virtual LEWA Marathon Challenge, Eliud's presence and participation was a boost for the wildlife rangers.
It means a lot actually to run with Edward and the old rangers, to run with that person that when you're actually asleep at night, he's awake actually looking and then taking care of the precious animals, especially the big five, and especially the rhino and the elephants. They're really awake for 24 hours when you're asleep. And it's really a high time, and it's a honor for me to run with him.
As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, this year's LEWA Marathon annually has been cancelled, and in its place, a virtual challenge shall be held on the 27th of June, with the organizers encouraging their supporters to run anywhere they are in the world.
It's good that everybody actually to register for LEWA and run at his own home, get out of your door, run the kilometers actually you have decided, either 5, 10, 20, 15. And actually that will be LEWA Marathon. And the purple we have run, we have put, and we have actually contributed to a noble cause in LEWA.
The LEWA ambassador was accompanied by world half marathon record holder Geoffrey Kamworor, as well as other two elite athletes, Philemon Rono and Jonathan Career.
It was really important for me to come with people like Eliud and to come run with rangers to show that support to them, that we are together at these strange times, that together we can manage. So it was a way of motivating them and showing them that we are together at these strange times.
The event, which in previous years has raised an annual 50 million shillings for a range of conservation, community development and education projects, benefits thousands across Kenya.
An unnamed Bournemouth player is one of the two new coronavirus cases discovered by the latest round of Premier League tests, taking the overall total of positive results to 8 in the championship. 2 individuals from Hull City have tested positive after 1,014 tests were undertaken at all the 24 championship sides over the past 72 hours.
2 new cases of coronavirus have been found in the latest round of Premier League tests. Tests took place on Tuesday, Thursday and Friday of last week, with 996 players and club staff tested. The first round results, announced on 19th May, saw 6 positives from 3 clubs of 748 players and staff tested. That number included the positive tests of Watford's Adrian Mariappa and Burnley assistant manager Ian Wan. Players or club staff who have tested positive must self-isolate for a period of 7 days. For the second round of testing, the number of tests available to each club was increased from 40 to 50. Squads started non-contact training from Tuesday for the first time since the Premier League was suspended on 13th March because of the coronavirus pandemic, with 92 fixtures remaining.
To a shock 3-0 home defeat by relegation threatened Augsburg, their 4th defeat in 5 games, dropping them to 8th place in a German Bundesliga. It was Augsburg's first victory after 4 straight losses, a win that lifted them up to the top on 30 points, 7 above the relegation playoff spot. that's it for sport. Thank you for keeping us company. Remember, tonight we just want to have a look at the status of COVID-19 in the country. Now we have a total of 1,214 cases today. 22 more people tested positive for the coronavirus. The government spokesperson, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, is in the studio. Your questions highly received, and of course you can keep them coming. We'll also be having a look at what is happening at the city of Mombasa. It is the second leading, and of course as of Friday, 388 people had tested positive for COVID-19, and today 9 more people tested positive for the virus. We'll also be having that discussion with a team leader in the Mombasa County response team. Godfrey Ndung will also be helping us answer those questions. I first want to have a look at the weather forecast up next, and then after the weather forecast, of course, a discussion on the family matters. See you on the other side of the break.
Caught in a landslide.
Every Monday evening, we take you back where the action happened.
We cheer up your Monday blues.
Our cameras rove all week to cover the latest in the enormous showbiz scene.
We show you what you missed even if you were present.
Grapevine gives 100% support to the local entertainment content.
From celebrity buzz,
music,
fashion,
and all manner of entertainment and youth talent.
Watch Grapevine every Monday at 10 p.m.
Remember what they say, if you did not see it on Grapevine, then it was probably...
It never happened.
What you gotta do.
On the next episode of Elena's Ghost.
And that I hope she can forgive me one day. And I'm not gonna take any risk, but this is gonna be a private operation. I don't want anyone else to know about this. Not even the police, okay?
Let's go outside so you can socialize with all of your new buddies.
No, don't take me to the other inmates.
You are truly a terrible man, you know that? We're partners. We work together for you to have your damn wife and part of your stupid ranch.
I heard that you settled down, that you found a girl and you're married now.
On the next episode of Corner.
Me, the harder I try, the more guarded he gets.
Well, that's just because you're the only one who can get to him.
Not true.
It is true.
A manager would not show up at my house in the morning to discuss our personal relationship.
Why are you being so mean?
I trust you understand that it must not look like sabotage.
Of course, but I need an assurance from you. What happens after I do this for you?
Do I have to repeat the same thing over and over again? And you're not children!
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Family Matters. The status of COVID-19 in the country is what we talk about tonight. And my guests are ready. One of them is live here on our studios, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, the government spokesperson. And I'm also speaking with Godfrey Ndungu, who is coming to us live from Mombasa County. It's good to see you, Godfrey, and also welcome to the show. Cyrus Oguna, I'm also welcoming you to our show. Probably I can start by asking you from, let's begin with the latest. Today we saw 22 more cases of COVID-19 being announced by the Health CAS, Dr. Rashid Aman, and of course this is from the over 1,000 samples that were collected. But when we get to test about 3,000 samples or 2,000, then we are getting higher number of positive cases. Beginning with you, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, the numbers as we see them increasing, is it because of the mass testing that we are doing, because there is a confusion, or it's Kenyans who are flouting the government guidelines?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, I would like to start by wishing our Muslim brothers Eid Mubarak as they celebrate the end of the holy month of Ramadan. Now, regarding that question, is a combination of factors. One is that the numbers are rising because indeed we have ramped up our testing capability. The more you test, certainly the more you're likely to find to be positive. But the other aspect of it is that initially our interventions were focusing on trying to stop importation of the virus. But the virus eventually got its way into the country and began to spread within our communities. So the number that we're seeing is because the virus is actually right now firmly within the community.
All right, thank you for that. And Ndungu, let me also engage you. In the last 24 hours, we saw 9 more cases of COVID-19 announced from Mombasa County. And of course, areas like Mvita, they have been recording most cases of COVID-19. Would you also agree with the government spokesperson that the numbers are increasing because there is a ramped up testing going on in Mombasa County, or what could be the problem?
Thank you so much for your invitation. And I'd like to echo what our government spokesman has just said. The numbers are recent because of the targeted mass testing, and this is due to the activeness of the response teams with working hand in hand with the contact tracing team. Thereby, we are doing the target testing. Thereby, we have increased the number of positive cases.
All right. Thank you for that. Let me stay with you. You have been at the front line, Godfrey, especially in the fight for this COVID-19, responding to COVID-19 patients. And also we do understand that Mombasa County has also quite a number of fatalities from the 51 that we have. As a clinical officer, someone who is at the front line, tell us how things have changed for you as healthcare workers. How is that experience like?
Okay, my experience as a clinical officer, at first it has been amazing, whereby you see handling this pandemic, it has not been there, and just we were sent to the battle, and we thank God because as days went by, we were able to get by, and our county government, we thank God, our governor supported us through meetings, through public participation, and with that, we have been able to conquer well. And though the journey has not been that smooth, we still have a lot to do, and we really appreciate the effort of the county government through the various departments in enabling us, the frontiers, to work hand in hand.
All right. I'll get back to you, Godfrey, but thank you so much for that. Let me get back to you, sir. Once again, I'm welcoming you to the show, and thank you so much. Talking about the healthcare workers, because we are speaking with a clinician, let's talk about the challenges that they have been highlighting, especially on the personal protective equipment. I know there is a global shortage, but they have been decrying that we cannot continue being at the front line when ourselves we are not protected. How far is the government? What are you doing to ensure that every person at the front line, at least, they are protected from also getting infected?
Now, our healthcare workers are actually our frontline soldiers. They are the ones who come into contact with, those of us who test positive of COVID. And therefore, their safety and their well-being becomes our first priority. We do appreciate that in the initial days, we had issues with getting PPEs because of the disruption of the global supply chain. Everybody at the time wanted, the PPEs. But again, like you also say, certain times, whenever every cloud has got a silver lining. Mm-hmm. So even though we had issues of getting these PPEs from outside, we looked internally and we were able to discover that we actually have got, large potential in the country. So right now we are manufacturing these PPEs locally, and therefore there is no shortage at all as we are speaking. In fact, we have so much of it, from that have been bought by the government itself, and even from well-wishers. So all healthcare workers right now have, sufficient PPEs to be able to protect them. Indeed, you recall that about a week ago, the Minister of Health, sent a team to Namanga through Kajiado, of course, and they took their a consignment of PPEs to the healthcare workers in Kajiado. Two days ago, another team went to, including the Minister for Health, went to Machakos, and again with another consignment of PPEs. So really, as far as protection of our healthcare workers, there's no problem with that. We have sufficient PPEs to be able to ensure that they work not only under sufficient protection, but also in an environment and condition that ensures that they are well protected.
All right, government spokesperson confirming that as of today, all frontline healthcare workers have the personal protective equipment, and there's no shortage in the country.
We have enough in the country. There's no shortage whatsoever because we're producing them there. And I may also hasten to add, but the ones that we're producing here today in the country are of much, much better quality than even some of the ones that we're importing.
All right, let me get back to you, Ndungu. Thank you again for staying with us, and you have been at the front line. I saw in some of the pictures shared by the county government of Mombasa, having to deal with the patients, and of course also with, unfortunately, the people who've lost to the virus. That must have been disturbing. Tell us the psychological impact, because there have been calls to help healthcare workers, especially the ones at the front line, with some sort of psychological support. Godfrey, can you hear me?
Handle such scenarios. We thank God because also the positive patient and all those that have been taken to the quarantine before they are admitted to the various places, being given the counseling sessions, and so far we appreciate the efforts of the county government.
All right, and finally, before I let you go, we have the government spokesperson right here. As a frontline healthcare worker, what is this one request that you would make to the government for you probably to be comfortable as you stay at the front line in the fight against COVID-19, Godfrey?
Thank you. First, we want to appreciate that the fact that providing adequate PPEs, and that for sure we thank God for that. And we really need more to be there, and participation of other providers like the CHVs, where we will reach more to the community. And so we request employment of more clinicians and other healthcare workers to handle this pandemic and other issues to arise. And our appeal as clinical officers, as healthcare workers, is to have better employment terms than temporary and the contracts, whereby some have already qualified, but they are employed as interns. And one more thing that we may request is harmonization, the risk allowance across all the healthcare workers.
Okay. Godfrey Ndungu, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for speaking to us from Mombasa County. Of course, we'll be having a look at some of those issues. Do have yourself a good night, and God bless for being part of Family Matters tonight. Okay, and Kano, let's finish up with the healthcare providers, because there was a welfare package that was directed or released by the head of state to just ensure that the frontline healthcare workers are comfortable. But last week we saw a cadre claiming that they're being sidelined and they actually wanted to go on strike. Thanks, there have been talks to it.
Really, healthcare workers comprise several segments within the health system, and there is no cadre that has been left out, really. All of them have been taken as one entity, and the package, the welfare package, encompasses all of them. But there is none of any element within the entire ecosystem of healthcare working team that has been left out.
Mm-hmm.
So the package is looked at in totality, and when it is ready, it will be rolled out to all of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Now let's get to the status of COVID-19 in the country. The first case was reported on the 12th or the 13th of March, and since then we've been seeing so many cases of COVID-19, and of course guidelines being put up by the Minister of Health and the government. But why are we 3 months on, 73 days on, why are we still not on top of the game? Do we say that the curve is flat or at the surge? People want to understand, actually, most of them asking, when is this ending?
Okay. We are actually on top of the game, and I'll explain to you why. If you recall, according to the projections that were given out by experts, that by the end of April, we're supposed to have hit 10,000 mark of infections. Now, by the end of April, we're not even 1,000 of infections. So really, that would indicate that our responses and even our interventions, measures to try and contain the infections, have been working. Because if that was not the case, we would have been talking about several, tens of thousands as of now.
Mm-hmm.
We're only talking about 1,200 and something. That indicates that really our responses, our intervention measures are actually working.
Mm-hmm.
But we must also say that, this is not to mean that we've actually been able to completely contain infection, because you can still see the numbers keep on going up and down and going up. And all we can ask, every Kenyan is that this is not a war that should be expected to be fought by the government. It's a war that must be fought by everyone. And indeed, to be sincere, this is a war that must be fought by individuals, not by the government. The government's role here is just to coordinate and direct. But every one of us, in fact, even though we have been saying that the frontline, soldiers are actually the healthcare workers, but realistically, each and every one of us is actually the frontline soldier. Mm-hmm. So the healthcare workers should be actually in the second row of defense. But the first row of defense is actually individual Kenyans. Mm-hmm. So if you are to take responsibility into this fight, that all advisories and all measures that have been put, advocated for by the Minister of Health are followed to the letter, then you don't even need to go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. Maybe one of two or a few would go to the hospital.
So right? For the many cases that we're seeing, we are saying that Kenyans have not taken the front line in the fight against...
A large majority of Kenyans have actually complied. And that is why we are seeing, the numbers are not as large as had been predicted earlier on, because of the compliance, measure that most of Kenyans have been able to demonstrate. But we must also acknowledge that there are few who are yet to be able to join into the fight. But we are, saying largely that a critical mass of Kenyans are actually complying, and that's why we're seeing the numbers are not rising as fast as they should have been.
And if Kenyans continue to comply, when do we expect to have our curve flat?
You cannot predict what's going to happen tomorrow or the day after, but all you can say is that let Kenyans continue to complying, and as we follow the guidelines and the measures that have been put in place, certainly the curve is going to flatten out completely, all right? But as of now, we are still seeing surges here and there based on the fact that majority are complying, but a few are not complying. And those few that do not comply also undermine the effort of those who are complying.
Yeah, and most countries have demonstrated that mass testing could really help in determining the actual number of people who are positive and flattening the curve. But still, 3 months on, we are testing 2,000, 1,000. We keep on saying we have the capacity to do this.
Let me also clarify about the aspect of mass testing. Maybe that term has been used loosely. Yeah. Mass testing in the way people want to imagine is like going out to some place and then people just come en masse and then they're tested. But that is not necessarily what we are doing as government. What we are doing is targeted testing, whereby you go to a certain area that has demonstrated that there are infections in that place. And then you contain that area, test people there. Anybody who tests positive, then the contacts are traced, and by doing such, you're trying to ensure that you cordon off that place so that the virus do not spread to those who may not have been infected. That is what we are doing. But we also acknowledge that there have been certain challenges as far as getting test kits are concerned, all right? And that is why a few times we'd see us going to 3,600, and then other times coming down to maybe 1,100, like that. But these are issues that are, of course, brought about by the global supply chain. However, we are trying to work around them so that we can ensure that we have sufficient test kits in the country.
All right. In other words, what you're saying, because it's a target testing, we as a country do not have a target of the number of people we want to test in a certain period, because so far we are at 59,000 people. Yeah.
Right now, we have 20 labs that are able to test. And we can test as many as 7,000 in all those 20 labs that are spread from all the way from Museo to Mombasa, including 2 mobile laboratories that were installed recently. One, of course, at Namanga border post. Another one is destined to go to Naivasha ICD, all right? So we have that. But even with that kind of facility and capability in country, but the reagents are not there, all right, in sufficient quantities. And therefore, what I'm saying is that we can test as many as 7,000, in upward of 7,000, but you need the testing kits. We do not make them locally, and you have to, to order for them from abroad. So sometimes you order about maybe 20, 30,000, and you get 15,000, right? Because of disruption within the global supply chain. But the fact that many other countries are also going for the same. And that is the challenge that we have. But in terms of in-country capacity, we have sufficient capacity.
Yeah, and that's why people keep on asking why we are not testing as many people as possible. So if we can test, we have the capacity to conduct such tests, the target testing, but right now we lack the reagents.
Maybe using the word lacking is not appropriate.
Yeah, inadequate.
Because we don't lack. It's only that we have the money, but then because of supply and demand issues and the global supply chain disruptions, what we order sometimes is not exactly what we get. But we keep on getting, and as we get, then we ramp our testing. When they run out, we get more. And that's what we've been doing, all right? But if you have to get like 100,000, you'll be able to test 7,000 every day.
Is it a challenge that we could see any solution soon?
Yes, we're trying to get it from different, supply, locations that have been approved by WHO. And as soon as that happens, we'll be able to get as many, testing reagents as possible.
All right. There's the question of the restrictions that have been imposed by the government. Of course, we saw the extension of the dusk to dawn curfew to the 6th of June, including the inter-county movement, especially on the Mombasa, Nairobi, the coastal counties, Nairobi and Mandera County. most Kenyans are asking, when are we seeing this end coming to an end? Because, of course, we'll be talking about the economic impact of the COVID-19.
Indeed, as with regard to when restriction of movement in and out of Nairobi, Mombasa, Kilifi, Kwale, Mandera would happen, it depends on a lot of factors. I must tell you that is always a consideration is on the table, it's being looked at every single day. But as to when it will happen depends on a number of factors. Remember, the coordinating committee is actually called NAC, National Emergency Response Committee. And this committee comprises so many other agencies that look at the developments every single day, including experts from the private sector. So every development is looked at very, very keenly to determine where we are heading. And therefore, that NAC recommends action to be taken. And therefore, based on what they are seeing, the assessment being made, the evaluations, then they'll be able to recommend with regard to when a restriction can be lifted. And I'm aware that the head of state did indicate yesterday that, yes, there's a possibility of that. But he was also very quick to add that we must continue to comply. Yes.
And
so if we don't comply, it certainly becomes very, very hard to lift them, because then we'll see infection going up, and we cannot risk the lives of Kenyans.
And the 6th of June is one after actually the week that begins tomorrow. The other week we're expecting to get to the 6th of June. There are discussions ongoing, and I know you're part of the discussions. The restrictions, or the tough restrictions that were imposed, let's say last month, it was because of the number of cases that were being reported in the country. But right now you've said that most Kenyans are adhering to these guidelines. Probably the discussions, are we seeing any positives coming from a discussion that I think now this is happening? Kenyans are now understanding what COVID-19 is, because we also need to, there was a strategy by the head of state to reopen the economy. Yeah.
And
should we remain optimistic on
that's
that
what I'm
regard?
saying, that this committee evaluates developments day by day. And on the basis of that evaluation, then they recommend action to be taken. It is not a one-man show. It's not a one-man decision. It is a complicity, of many agencies coming together and looking at the various aspects. Remember, people look at COVID as something that has, several elements to it. Indeed, but the core aspect of COVID is actually health. These other aspects of the economy are actually a byproduct of health crisis or health issue. So the moment we fix the health issue sufficiently well, then these others can actually be able to be brought on board and be fixed. But the first one that we must be able to focus our resources, focus our efforts in, is to fix the health issue. And therefore, even as we're talking about economic impact, education, how it has impacted on education, is how a health issue has impacted on this other aspect of our economy. And therefore, this committee I'm talking about looks at how are we progressing as far as the health aspect of it is concerned. If everything looks like we are stabilizing, then other decisions shall be made at the right time.
All right. We'll talk briefly about the economic impact of COVID-19, but on the testing, still on the testing of the patients, we've seen a lot of, especially when we are testing the truck drivers at our border points, there's a lot of delay. There are complaints coming from, especially on getting the results. There is no smooth transition, especially when you're taking goods to the other country or movement. There's even someone who's saying there's no smooth testing and getting your results before you could transition to the next country, get your goods from the port, transport them. What's happening at our border points? Because there have been, in the last few weeks, many complaints, especially from the truck drivers. Some saying they're being frustrated by the neighbors.
There is an agreed protocol regarding how truck drivers are supposed to, be managed. And the protocol is very, very clear that every truck driver must take a COVID test 48 hours before the start of his or her journey. And the COVID test is taken from the point of origin of the journey. For us here in the country, we have several testing locations. If you're starting your journey from Mombasa, you will be tested in Mombasa. If you're starting your journey from Nairobi, the same. From Namanga, the same. From Nakuru, Eldoret, Malaba, Busia, Kisumu, the same. But it must be done 48 hours before you start your journey, right? Once you have been given COVID-free certificate, based on what the protocol says, that the other neighboring countries will be able to respect that and will be given access to go into the other country. The same would apply to the other countries, the neighboring countries, all of them together, right? So the initial delay that was there, of course, going to be sorted out, because this protocol was just agreed about recently. You recall we had issued the neighboring country that was sorted out, amicably, yesterday or the day before yesterday, in as far as how cross-border truck drivers should be managed and treated, in as far as COVID testing is concerned. That's what has been agreed on.
Yeah.
So any queues that might have been there is going to be sorted out. And I have also mentioned that at Namanga border, we have gone a step ahead to install a mobile laboratory at the border. So there'll be no point of taking samples anywhere away from the border area. And that's also to be able to shorten the turnaround time between the time the samples are taken and to the time that results are given out. All right? So 48 hours, they'll be able to have gotten their result.
All right. And there are so many cases of COVID-19 coming from the border counties or border regions along the border counties, let's say Kajiado County, Migori County. When the cases of COVID-19 emerged in Nairobi and the coastal counties, there was a cessation of movement that was announced from these counties, but we've not seen the government saying, listen, we'll not now be allowing movement of people from, let's say, Kajiado to another county or Migori to another county. What's happening?
People, well, I think the people that have really been found to be positive, not really all of them are actually coming or hailing from Kajiado as a county. Most of them are actually truck drivers, and Namanga is actually within Kajiado County. So for those that have been positive, and hailing from Kajiado County, the number is very, very small. But the large number we are seeing, in Kajiado County are actually numbers of truck drivers that have tested positive at Namanga border. You understand? And that's why we are saying that the truck drivers are actually a new high-risk population. And that is why it was necessary to take a mobile laboratory at Namanga. So that is exactly the reason why even these protocols have been developed, to ensure that only a COVID-free driver is allowed to enter onto his vehicle and cross into another country. But if you have not tested for COVID, they'll not be allowed to enter in any neighboring country.
All right. And before the partial lockdown of Isli and Kawangware and Old Town in Mombasa, there were so many cases of coronavirus being reported in those areas. But right now, we are seeing few cases being reported. Is it because the virus has been contained in those areas, or it's again target testing that has become a challenge?
It's target testing, not really a challenge. Target testing is, like I did mention, is that, Old Town was identified as an area that had, demonstrated that several infections in that. And in order to allow, or to contain it from going out into other areas of Mombasa, it became necessary to cordon, to lock it out, so that those within Old Town can be tested there, and those that turn positive to be taken to an isolation facility and be treated, including their contacts. And that is important, because if you do not know where the virus is, then there is no way you're going to combat it. There's no way you're going to fight it. And therefore, the targeted testing was essentially, aimed at identifying areas that could, be termed as epicenters of infection, lock that area out, and then identify those within that area so that they do not spread virus to others within the same areas who may not have been infected, but at the same time to ensure that it is not spread out of such areas to other communes or estates that may not also be having high incidences of infection. Okay. That is why that happened in Old Town and Isli as well.
Let's pick a few questions. On Twitter, Bokea Anthony is asking, why can't the government lift the travel restrictions since this COVID is here to stay for long? We need to plan how to live with it.
We have not necessarily, come to that decision that, COVID is here to stay. Indeed, you cannot necessarily, eliminate it entirely. But we are saying that when a smaller number, begins to, to test positive, then we will be able to, take certain measures as that time. But right now, because of the figures we are seeing, the numbers we are seeing, then it will be a bit premature to lift them entirely. However, like I said at the beginning, there is a committee that looks at all development, and then that committee will determine whether it is appropriate to lift, or they'll advise as necessary, and then appropriate action shall be taken.
William Mamburi is saying, ask him, here in Watamu, we depend on tourism, and since March 1st, I have been suddenly unemployed. I have not benefited from the relief food program by the government. What measures is being taken for our survival?
Indeed, many countries of the world have had the tourist sector impacted negatively. Remember that COVID is something that is transmitted by human beings, and because of that, what you want to limit is movement of human beings, so that those who may be infected would not move around and infect others. Those tourists are actually human beings, and therefore, to ensure that the disease is not spread quickly from one country to another, is to limit international travel. And that has happened to many countries of the world. But indeed, we also appreciate that it has impacted on several service-related sectors. And one of the such sectors is tourism. And many other sectors of the economy have been affected, hotel, transport. And for those that have lost livelihoods, and indeed there are many, the government has gone a step ahead and tried to identify those that are very vulnerable, completely vulnerable, and has provided some kind of social protection to them during this time when the situation is still very bad.
All right, Josephat Musa from Kisii County. My question is there a vaccine, any vaccine development that is going on?
Well, I'm not a doctor really, so I will not be able to address that. But what I know is that if there is or there isn't, we have protocols in the country that will be able to be followed. And once any of such vaccines are found, then we shall be notified as a country, and government will give direction of what needs to be done.
All right. And then Dr. Ogecha is asking, can the government consider reopening the courts to avoid courts in police stations?
Like I said, that there is a committee that is looking at every situation in as far as COVID is concerned, but the core, issue here is health. Once the aspect of health is deemed to have been, sorted out, then the others certainly will follow suit.
At Bairaguba, Kennedy Jr. is asking, what will happen to the foreigners whose visas expired during the lockdown?
Indeed, the government gave out, a window for those who wanted to go back to their countries to go. And there are many countries that came in to evacuate their people, and they went back. But for those who are here and their visa expired, and we understand the condition or the situation that under which the visas have expired, of course, certainly they'll be able to explain themselves. The government is a listening government, and they'll be able to take appropriate action that will ensure that they're assisted.
All right, and this other one is a technical question from Tycoon is asking. My question is, if a person tests positive, then taken for isolation, he or she recovers and tests negative, can he or she get reinfected?
Yes, I'm answering that question based on what I have heard, not what I have learned, because I'm not a doctor. But what I've heard is that you can be reinfected between 30 and 50 days. If you were initially, infected, you were treated, you recovered, you tested negative, but within a period of 50 days, between 30 and 50 days, you can be reinfected, especially for those who have got other underlying, conditions.
Okay, let's take another one from Simau Mao on Twitter. We are always told about the number of recoveries. We would like to see them. Indeed,
that is a good question, but again, you must also take, cognizant of the fact that revealing identity of a patient, is a matter of confidentiality. So the patient must be ready, to have his or her identity revealed. But nonetheless, the truth of the matter is, all these numbers we've been talking about, recoveries, positive, those are actual cases that exist. I remember that there was a feature that was carried by one of the media houses of those that have recovered. So yes, there are recoveries. Yes.
And lastly, Charles Kivi is asking, what criteria is the government using to identify the most vulnerable in the society in their cash transfer program?
Yet there's a clear criteria that is used by the government. One of the criteria that can tell you, right away that first of all, where you are staying is the number one criteria. Of course, if you're in Nairobi and staying in the areas of Kilimani, you're staying in the areas of South C, South B, areas of Runda, you may not necessarily qualify. But nonetheless, is that it is not necessarily identified by an individual. It is as a committee that is formed at the grassroots level, at the sub-locational level, which is headed by the local sub-chief. And there's also a locational level, which is headed by the chief. They know who among their community is actually vulnerable, right? So the starting point is at the sub-locational level, including the Nyumba Kumi. So it is not the national government that would say so-and-so should have been this list, but he is out. That is the responsibility of the people at the grassroots level who interact with that community on a day-to-day basis. They'll know who is more deserving than the other, or than another.
All right, and the person who's asking about the most vulnerable is saying, my question actually is about what the government is doing to cater for those who've already been dismissed from work.
Indeed, the government has done a bit, really, to be able to provide for those that are vulnerable and have lost their livelihoods. But again, I must also add that it is not realistically possible for the government to provide for everyone. Those that have lost their livelihood, but they're still able to provide for themselves. But the government knows that there are those that are completely unable to provide for themselves, right? And therefore, it goes back to the local committee or the local secretariat to determine who at the community level has lost his or her job and is completely vulnerable. Indeed, honestly, we must agree, we are human beings, we are rational people. We know that there are those who really will not necessarily require government support, even though they have lost their jobs. But there are those that certainly will require government support because of having lost livelihood, mamambogas. And that is why the government, in its wisdom, came up with that economic stimulus plan to be able to provide support to those vulnerable members of our society.
All right, and Ruth, allow me to pick one more question from our Facebook page, and this is in regard to a report by my colleague Caroline Kamau on the street children. Someone is asking, ask the government spokesperson, what's the government's measures put in place to care for the less fortunate, especially those on the streets, like that guy, John Mwangi?
Indeed, a good question. The responsibility of taking care of all those street families in every urban center is actually a responsibility that has been delegated to the county government. So I know all county governments have got a plan to ensure that all members of a society that are vulnerable, are in the streets, are actually being taken care of. So there are programs to ensure that they're actually being catered for, even as we fight this pandemic.
Yeah, and health officials have said that social distancing is the most efficient way to prevent spread of COVID-19. But we've seen security officers forcing people to put on their masks, especially in their private cars. Kindly make this clear.
This is let me say it's a question that has come many, many times, and I'm glad that you brought it up so that we can be able to make a clarification. Is that a lot of questions regarding it have come from people who are actually car owners, people who drive their own private cars. And if you are in your private car and alone, and your windows are rolled up, and you're driving, that is completely private. But the moment, assuming that a police officer flags you down and you move by the side of the road and he approaches you and you lower your window, that act of lowering the window transforms that surroundings from being private to being public. And at that time, the police officer has got every right to arrest you, right? Now, the other scenario is this, that you're in your car with other people and you don't have mask. Of course, that is, again, it's no longer private, it is public. The third scenario is that you're in your car, alone, in a jam, and the windows are rolled down. Again, that means that it is no longer private, it is public. And at that time, a police officer can be able to take action against you. Why is that critical? Because once you lower your window and you sneeze or you cough, chances are that you'll be coughing with your mouth directed away from the car or through the window that is lowered, and somebody is passing by, maybe a hawker or something. Of course, you're endangering that hawker's life. And therefore, we are trying to encourage our people to ensure that at all times they have masks, because the mask is intended to protect yourself and the person next to you. It is not aimed at punishing anyone. It's actually intended to promote a good health behavior.
All right, and lastly, time is not on our side, but I'll also welcome you as you answer this one. Your parting shot is well welcome. Among the testing of COVID-19, testing people for COVID-19, and once they are positive, isolation and treatment, which of these services is the government offering for free?
The government is offering for free quarantine facility. The government is offering for free isolation and treatment facility. Now, testing in certain areas are free, but the government has said that it will be able to provide, subsidize. So for a test that's costing 10, 11,000, you only pay 1,000 bob, right? But quarantine and isolation facility and even treatment is free, right? So people should not worry. But in targeted testing that is being done right now, in targeted testing, it's actually free. So when they come to your location or your estate, they are waiting for people to come and be tested. Do not be afraid that they're going to ask you for any money. Present yourself. You will be tested at government expense. If you are unfortunately positive, you'll be taken to isolation facility at government expense. You will be treated at government expense and be let to go home. For the contacts of those who might have tested positive, they also should not be afraid to give out, some of them, from what we've gathered, are actually switching off their numbers, their mobile phones, which is not a good thing, because you may never know that you're already positive, and in the process you end up endangering and even infecting your loved ones. So again, when they are brought into a quarantine facility, it is free of charge. For those who will test positive within the quarantine facility, they'll also be taken to isolation facility free of charge. Right? So the government is actually providing these services, let me say, free of charge.
All right.
Finally,
yes,
is to ask Kenyans really that this, like I started by saying, that this is not a war that can be fought by the government. It is a war that the government only directs, but it's a war that must be fought by ourselves, the people of this country, by taking responsibility. It is not right that, a matatu is full, yet a matatu is supposed to carry only 8 people. I can count. I'm a rational human being. It is already 8 people in it until I want to be the 9th person. Yet I know the directory. So all I'm asking for is that let's obey, let's comply with the measures that the government has put in place, so that we can be able to flatten our curve as fast as possible.
All right, Colonel Cyrus Oguna, thank you so much. It's a great pleasure having you in our studios tonight, discussing more on the status of COVID-19 in the country. Wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much for inviting
me. All right, and thank you so much for watching our show tonight, for your feedback, your questions, so many of them, but I trust mostly or most of them have been addressed. Once again, I thank you for watching. I'm Purity Museo. Lensa Odingo has been our sign language interpreter. Have yourself a lovely night and enjoy the rest of your week ahead.